Welcome back to Bros and Boxers. I'm your host, Michael, and I'm afraid today I won't have my co-host joining me. Casey is out on vacation due to the Christmas holiday, so we're going to go ahead and try to solo this episode. I'll try not to bore you too much, but I still wanted to cover a couple topics this week. First thing I wanted to talk about was the show itself. We are making an effort to get on a more scheduled release, trying to do an every Saturday kind of thing. We're not sure what span the season will run right now. That's still open for discussion, but we are trying to make sure that the show is more reliable, so to speak, so that you can tune in, hopefully weekly. So right now, like I said, shooting for a Saturday release every week. Might take off for certain holidays. I don't know. Anyway, just a little quick update. Won't bore you too long. Let's dive right into the latest. First thing I want to talk about, something that's seems to be popping up everywhere. I get these articles recommended to me on Google now, on my phone. Whenever I open Chrome, it has like an aggregator right there. So that's one of those things that always grabs me. You know, I'll admit I use Reddit too much, but sometimes I'll close Reddit and I go to Chrome, and I'm moving from one aggregator to the other. So it's just anyway. I digress. But one of the things I've seen pop up a lot is all the talk about Cyberpunk. I have to say I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I haven't played the game, so I'm not saying I'm disappointed with the game. I'm just disappointed to see the reception it's getting. And I'm not saying that I think people should have, just accepted it for what it is. No, I'm saying it's just a bummer. I mean, we've heard this game has been hyped for how long? It seems like a decade now, but it's just been forever that we've just been hearing all this hype about Cyberpunk. So to see it get this poor reception is just a real bummer. And in case you're not aware, it seems like what is happening is, so Cyberpunk is released multi-generational. So if you have an Xbox One, if you have an Xbox Series X, if you have a PS4, PS5, or PC, you're supposed to be able to buy Cyberpunk on any of those platforms. Problem is those older generations, those Xbox One and PS4 users, Cyberpunk doesn't really work at all. I think it was the IGN review that I saw. I mean, they gave Cyberpunk a pretty glowing review as far as playing on a PC. But then they say when you switch to playing on an Xbox One or PS4, it's near unplayable. I mean, the game completely dropping frames to the point of being completely frozen at some points. And, and other than that, you have to turn down the settings all the way if you want to even make it partially usable. So it's just a critical reception in that regard. Because, if you have a higher end gaming computer, it's been pretty good. People are saying you can get a decent frame rate. I'm still seeing a lot of reviewers saying it's difficult to get a 60 FPS frame rate, especially if you want the graphics to be what the game can put it to. And that's something that I've talked with Casey about in the past, and I've talked with other people about in the past of, should a game be able to run at the highest graphics on a common PC? Or should the devs say, okay, here's the graphic package you should be able to use in this game? So that's something that's kind of hard. It's kind of a gray area because, the PC market, it's not like you're building a game for a console where everyone's the same. Now, flipping back, talking about the consoles, to me, that's inexcusable. You should say, okay, I'm releasing it on this console. It's going to be this kind of game. It's going to function this way. It's going to look this good. And this is what you can expect. So to have a game that not only the graphics look terrible, but it's just completely unplayable, I mean, come on. It's inexcusable. Really, they should have either delayed the game again, which I understand, would have upset the base, but look at Breath of the Wild. That's what I always point to. I mean, that game was delayed for years, and look at the game we have now. It's a beautiful game. Is there still things about Breath of the Wild that, for instance, you go to the Deku Tree or whatever, in the Lost Woods, there's some frame drops around there that I still experience, and that to me is, somewhat inexcusable. But I'll say that is the only part of the game where I run into a graphical or gameplay bug. So I'll let it slide in the regard that it's one bug. It's not constant. But then you see these Cyberpunk bugs, and it's all over the place. People have floating cars. They have issues with the player models. All sorts of crazy bugs that we've been seeing. So just a bummer. We've come to expect a lot from CD Projekt Red, the development studio. So it's just hard to see that. I mean, I played Witcher 3 and absolutely loved the game. I mean, Witcher 3 to me was a masterpiece. It gave me that. It really scratched the Zelda itch, but with a different theme, and it just immersed me in the world. It made me really excited for the Witcher show that came out. So just a bummer to see that Cyberpunk has this kind of less than stellar release. But I won't spend the whole episode, on that. I will say too, I plan to get Cyberpunk. I'll probably give it at least 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. But I plan to get on PC anyway, so I'm still excited to play the game myself. Just a bummer to see that, really I think maybe they should have just scrapped the release on the old generations too. I don't know how you would have done that because you have pre-orders and the such, but it seems like pretty much any other method would have been better than what they did. Anyhow, moving along, we'll keep it nerdy here and we'll talk about The Mandalorian again. I'll try not to make this whole episode about Star Wars. I know our last episode was very Star Wars heavy, but I do have to talk about that season finale. I wish Casey was here because it was so exciting to me. I'm going to say real quick, spoiler alert, if you're not caught up on Mandalorian, this is season 2, the finale. It's a pretty big spoiler, so I'm going to give you a couple seconds here. Okay, you're in the spoiler zone. So that season finale, Mandalorian. I mean, that was awesome to me. I'm just going to come out and say it. Luke Skywalker. I've seen some people say, oh, they shouldn't have done Skywalker. We got to get away from the Skywalkers. But I mean, we've never got to see Luke in this form. I mean, he's a Jedi master. And he just proves, I mean, so right beforehand, before Luke comes onto the ship, we see Mando fight one of the Dark Troopers. And it's close. It's a close fight. I mean, Mando's really getting it handed to him there for a while. And it seems, I was actually thinking, like, are they going to take him out, kind of? I'm like, there's no, I mean, I didn't think they were going to kill him, but I'm like, are they going to incapacitate him? I mean, he was getting cleaned up. But then he uses the Beskar spear, of course, and he takes out the Dark Trooper, but it was a close call. So then when you see that fleet of Dark Troopers coming back, you're just like, oh man. And to me personally, I was like, okay, this Jedi has to show up here. Like, I was expecting a Jedi to show up, but I was not expecting Luke Skywalker. And to just see him just clean up, I mean, just wipe out those Dark Troopers. That was just too cool, man. It was like the, the sort of like childhood, like fan service. And ultimately people, I do think it was fan service, but it fit the story. And it was just really cool to see. I mean, I have no other words to say it. And I also liked, it's not like that was the whole thing in the episode. We had the fight between Moff Gideon and Mando. And we had the whole thing with the Darksaber. I mean, what are they going to do now? I mean, Mando is the rightful ruler of Mandalore now, right? I mean, he has the Darksaber. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Season 3. Is Bo-Katan going to be against him? I mean, the other thing is, like, how does the battle have to happen for her to take over? Does it have to be that she kills him? I mean, no, because he defeated Moff Gideon without killing him. And so could they just arm wrestle? I mean, how are they going to decide? How are they going to take it from there is kind of the interesting thing to me. I think it'll be cool, too, to see how everything ties together. Disney announced all those other shows since we last talked about Star Wars on this show. So we have the Ahsoka show coming up. We've got the Rogue Squadron show, and we've got this. So supposedly they're all going to tie together at some point in some sort of Avengers Endgame type of event for Disney Plus. So I think it'll be really cool to see what happens. I'm really excited for this. This gets me back into Star Wars. Like I said, I wasn't against the sequel trilogy, but it did kind of take away some of the excitement because Episode 7 had me on a high. Episode 8 was kind of like, rocky. Episode 9 felt good, but it also felt rushed in some spots. So to me, this is just like, that kind of like Star Wars excitement that I haven't felt since I was a kid and I saw the prequels. Because like I said, big fan of the prequels. So, send me the hate mail all day long. But I love the prequels. They're what I grew up with, and they got the flashy lightsaber battles. I'll admit some of the dialogue isn't always perfect, but I don't know. To me, it fits the theme of Star Wars. And like I said, I grew up with it, so I probably forgive it more than some people who grew up with the original trilogy. Anyway, don't want to make the whole episode about Star Wars again. We'll try to make maybe some sort of moratorium on Star Wars for a little bit. I just watched the season finale not long ago, so I had to talk about it. Something else I want to talk about. Casey and I were messaging about this on Christmas Eve, actually. I'm recording this right after Christmas here. But we were talking about how Christmassy does 2020 feel. It's been really hard for some people. I'll say for my family here, we've just been posted up inside. Haven't really been going out or anything. Just trying to lay low and stay safe. And I had a pretty good year overall. It was boring at times, but I'm a bit of a homebody anyway, so it wasn't horrible for me. Some people really took it hard. But one thing, the holidays are kind of always about getting together with family. So it was interesting. I'll say, to the question of how Christmassy does 2020 feel, which Casey posed, I'll say it felt not very Christmassy leading up to it. It felt a little bit lackluster. But then the day of, and even Christmas Eve, I really felt like, in the spirit, so to speak. I was excited about it. And, being a dad, of course, I get excited to see the little ones open their gifts. But, it's just, it kind of hit me last minute, I guess you could say. So I think I was fortunate that I have family here, at home. But I could see somebody who's, isolating and they live alone, maybe. Yeah, that could really take away from the spirit. So, like I said, it's been a tough year. I hope everybody had a good Christmas, good Hanukkah, good whatever you're celebrating. And I hope that by this time next year, we're not dealing with this anymore. Since we're on the topic of the pandemic, I've been seeing a lot of people on my Instagram and Reddit, and I don't have Facebook anymore, but just seeing it out on the social media, a lot of people getting the vaccine, and that excites me. I know there's some worries about the vaccine and such, but I'm excited for it. I mean, I'm just excited that we'll be at a point where things, there's a solution on the horizon, so to speak. Yes, there's still obstacles as far as distributing the vaccine goes. There's still obstacles about, who's going to take it first and, what side effects will you experience, that kind of thing. I'll say a friend of mine, or a friend of a friend, you know how that goes. A friend of a friend got the vaccine. She felt a little lousy the day of, but other than that, felt fine. So, I mean, that doesn't hold me up, feeling lousy for a day. I'd rather have that than have COVID. So, I'm excited to get it. I hope that you out there are at least considering getting it. If not for yourself, just for the people around you who maybe can't get it. Because that's the idea. We get as many people as possible to get it. And then those who are too ill or too old or whatever it may be, where their body could have a serious reaction to any vaccine, they get the herd immunity. So hopefully we can achieve that. I'm hoping, my personal hope is that by spring, we can have enough people vaccinated where we start seeing some return to normalcy. And I mean, that will be over a year. It was around March this year where things started going haywire. So a year is enough. Like I said, I'm a bit of a homebody, but even I'm ready to get back out there more and go back out on dates and stuff like that, and just feel like it's safe to be outside, basically, to be out and amongst the people. I want to go back to wishing I was at home. And, not to keep the whole podcast about the pandemic, but I do want to talk about the COVID relief bill. And I'm not going to get too political. I know Casey's not here to keep things apolitical. He does a great job of keeping me tempered and level-headed. So I'm just going to channel my inner Casey here and try to just keep it not political. But one thing I want to talk about is these omnibus bills. To me, these are just the weirdest thing. It seems so counter-democratic. I mean, and I don't mean Democratic Party versus Republican Party. I just mean democracy. So to my understanding, and feel free to send in an email and tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of these omnibus bills is it's basically a bill that has a bunch of different mini bills, almost a bunch of different things that senators want to get passed lumped into one, and then they vote on that and it all gets passed, basically. And this bill in particular, this is the omnibus bill that I'm referencing here, the one that's been in the news lately regarding the COVID relief. This bill is some 5,500 pages. And I think, most people, the House and the Senate, the members were saying that they only had 2 hours or something to review it. So it was literally impossible for them to actually read through it and know everything they're voting on. And I mean, that just seems so bad, for lack of a better word. I mean, you have these bills where you're just lumping things in and you're saying, oh, don't worry about the rest of this. It has this one thing that you're worried about, so vote for it. I don't know. I feel like you can't make a healthy decision in one way or another. And even if you knew every facet of the bill, what do? Do you make a pros and cons list? Everything that you like, you put in the pros, everything you don't in the cons, and at the end you decide if it's a wash? I don't know. It just seems to me like a bad system. I could see maybe if you had two bills that were really closely related. Say you had a bill that was saying, oh, all cars should stop at railroad tracks. Then you had another bill saying all buses should stop at railroad tracks. Maybe you combine those. But then at what point do you just say all automobiles? You know what I mean? That could be rewritten almost. So I don't know. These omnibus bills, to me, they just seem kind of devious. I think they should outlaw them. I mean, when I hear about this, when I read them, it just, not the bill, of course, because I didn't read 5,500 pages of a bill. But when I read about, everybody voting on them and the such, I can't imagine how that could be healthy. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, but if you have a suggestion for how an omnibus bill would be beneficial to pass, something I'm not thinking of, please send it in. And speaking of sending things in, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to shamelessly ask to please get some emails from you guys. We're dry on the emails here. Just email me. Just say whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Give us the hate mail, the love, something you want us to talk about. Send it into theboys@brosandboxers.com. Again, that's theboys@brosandboxers.com. The last thing I want to talk about today, before I let you go from my ramblings here, is hard disks, or, well, I guess removable disks. I just kind of want to talk about something that I've talked about before with people at work, and it's just kind of like mind-boggling to me is how inexpensive disk space has become. I mean, I remember when a terabyte would have run you $500. It's crazy to me to see these terabyte micro SD cards. They're like $100 now or less. I just got a 128 gig micro SD card for like $8 off Amazon. And I'm sure you could buy them off Walmart and the such. And I'm not trying to just plug Amazon here, but it just seems to me across the board, everything is just getting cheaper as far as disk space goes. And it's just interesting to me that it seems like it didn't take as long this time. I could be totally off base here, but it seems like it was just 2 or 3 years ago that a 500 gigabyte micro SD card was like hundreds of dollars. And now we're seeing 500 gigabyte micro SD cards for under $100. I mean, that is so cool to me. And another thing I think about a lot of times too is, so I have a Raspberry Pi here, and I think it's got a 128 gig SD card in it. It might be a 32 actually. I don't remember. But anyway, I digress. The Raspberry Pi has a controller on it for the micro SD card, so it uses that as its hard disk drive. And I wonder if we're going to see that start to trend toward desktop computers. I mean, if a micro SD card is going to be the same cost as a full-size SSD, and assuming we can get the transfer speeds to be the same as SATA, I would think that that's going to start replacing SSDs. I mean, it's a smaller form factor, and think of how many you could fit in. If you have a GPT partition on your computer, you can have limitless disk space, right? I know that Master Boot Record has 2 terabyte, I believe, per disk. I wonder if we're going to start seeing desktop computers start to trend toward that, to adopt that sort of onboard controller that the Raspberry Pi uses. I mean, I think that'd be cool. I can't really think of too many drawbacks to it. Like I said, right now, I think the transfer speed is slower for even if the controller's on the board, I think the transfer speed is slower but I mean, assuming that gets up to snuff here soon with SATA, I don't see what the drawback would be. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I remember, 15 years ago when I really started tinkering with computers with my father's equipment. It was, we were still using ribbon cables to connect hard drives to the motherboard. So I think it's going to be really cool to see the trends in the future, even 10 years from now, to see what does desktop computing look like. I don't necessarily think the form factor is going to get smaller. I think it might be more common soon to have multiple graphics card in every rig. I know my graphics card right now is absolutely massive, so I wonder if we're going to start seeing a demand here soon for smaller size graphics cards, assuming they can keep up to snuff on the computations at least. So give me your thoughts. Send me your thoughts. I don't have Casey here to speculate with me, so go ahead and send me your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen? Are we going to see things get smaller with desktop computing, or are we going to see things just kind of expand? Same size, more slots. Maybe there'll be some progress with RAM. Whatever you think. You send me in your thoughts on what you forecast for the next 5 to 10 years on the desktop computing scene. I will make one last bid to request some mail from you guys. Send it in. theboys@brosandboxers.com. Send us, like I said, anything you want us to talk about, any thoughts you had on a recent episode. Also, feel free to leave us a review, give us a like, whatever you want to do. We're also looking at maybe having some guests on. So if you know somebody who'd be interested in being on the show, send us a request there, and we'll see what we can do. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hopefully next week we'll be back to our regular scheduled programming. It is, of course, New Year's next weekend. Interesting how the holidays kind of all fell on weekends this year. But we'll see what we've got next weekend. And you might just hear more of my rambling. So until next time, thanks for listening.